These are videos I usually don't make, because I find that controversies surrounding the iPhone release week every year turn out to be more smoke than fire, and there's usually a week of people complaining about small, minute things that really don't turn out to be real issues. But this year, the iPhone 15 Pro seems to be gathering a specific amount of controversy that has tuned up to the point where I have seen countless tweets, videos, TikToks, you name it, discussing all of these issues, from the iPhone 15 Pro Max breaking too easily to it thermally getting way too hot, and people basically blaming issues on the design of the iPhone 15 Pro, particularly with Apple's choice to switch over to titanium instead of using the stainless steel design that they did on the old iPhone 14 Pro. Now listen, unlike most people, I am here to tell you, I don't know everything. I don't claim to be the final word on if the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max has issues, or maybe even in the future, some major design compromise flaw that even hasn't been unearthed yet might come to light, and there may be a bunch of issues with this phone. But right now, I'm just seeing a lot of unqualified opinions floating around the internet, and these controversies have boiled over to the point where my own audience is now commenting on my videos or DMing me and asking me if they should avoid the purchase of the iPhone 15 Pro because of the current issues. And unlike usual Apple iPhone discussions, which stay pretty rooted in the tech community, there's been enough spillover this year that I've seen people like Penguin Zero, who's a pretty popular YouTuber and he only has slightly better hair than me, talking about iPhone durability and making spurious, yes, I do know big words, spurious claims that modern Apple products compared to old Apple products.
Meanwhile, if you get a modern Apple product, there's a chance it stops working within the first week.
Before we even dive into the supposed issues on the iPhone 15 Pro, I gotta tackle this argument right away, and that's basically the tired argument that things back in the day were built better. And listen, you can objectively look at this thing. You don't have to use personal or anecdotal bias or evidence like he does. Older iPhones had far more issues than modern day iPhones. They didn't last as long. They didn't get as many software updates. They were more prone to breaking. The iPhone 4 literally had the biggest quality control scandal ever on an iPhone with its antenna gate issue. And the iPhone 4, strangely enough, was also the first iPhone to feature a full glass back. And that glass back then was so prone to shattering. It was infamous for it. And, it's no coincidence that the iPhone 5 switched to a mostly aluminum back just 2 years after the original iPhone 4 design. And if you look at modern day iPhones, even this iPhone 15 Pro, which people are complaining about the glass back, they are objectively much stronger than they were back then. So that argument is already done. It's not even worth mentioning anymore. And also, you think you can come over just like that, Charlie? Let me tell you something. I worked my ass off to get where I am, and you think you can take these shortcuts and you think suddenly you're my peer? You do what I do because you're funny and you can make people laugh? I committed my life to this. You don't slide into it like a cheap pair of slippers and reap all the rewards. Anyway, because of all this attention about the iPhone 15 Pro and so many dubious claims, I feel obligated to comment on these controversies with my own experience and my own take on what's important, because I feel like I should explain the issues with some of these controversies to my viewers to let them know if they are actual issues that you need to be worried about to stop you from purchasing this device. First off, let's start with durability claims, as I believe this one has skyrocketed to the top of the reasons why people are afraid to buy an iPhone 15 Pro. They're fearful that they're going to buy it and it's going to break. It's a reasonable fear to have. Now, of course, there's been a few drop test videos uploaded to YouTube already, but I think the most infamous video is from Everything, where he does his usual smartphone torture tests, which every iPhone survived, I might note, including the iPhone 15 Pro. The only one that really failed it was the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which had the glass back shatter when he tried to do a bend test. Now, if this little controversy sounds familiar to you, it's because this thing is spreading in a similar fashion to the now infamous iPhone 6 Bendgate controversy. Again, I think the glass shattering on the back is probably a better built phone than the iPhone 6 bending. Things weren't necessarily built better back then again. Just pointing that out there. But in general, this video has sparked people just reusing this image and talking about how the iPhone 15 Pro is more fragile compared to last year's 14 Pro. Now listen, will your iPhone 15 Pro Max glass shatter if you try and physically bend it? I don't know. But as a normal user, I don't think you're ever gonna try and do that. Normally, I discount these bend test videos anyway because no one in the real world is willingly going to take their phone and try and bend it as hard as they can. I know I'm not right now, even though I'm, giving you the visual of it. And listen, most people aren't trained assassins that can kill you just by applying their thumbs to pressure points on your body like jury-rig everything. So that guy has unnatural strength. That's a joke. Now, drop tests are usually more of an indication of real-world durability. We all drop our phones from time to time, and there's a fair share of drop test videos out there which also show the glass breaking much easier than the iPhone 14 Pro's back. Now, these videos seem pretty reasonable, but I do think there's also a flaw with them as well, because I think most drop test videos do a poor job usually showing real-world scenarios, again, of how people drop their phones. Usually these are, just phones dropping flat onto concrete, and they don't really simulate a lot of the drops most users experience, which usually isn't hitting flat concrete over and over and over again. It's people just dropping their phones on a table, on the carpet, on hardwood floor, yes, on cement too, but on tile, on all these different surfaces, on different angles, hitting all different sorts of things when you drop it. I think out of all the drop test videos I watched, Mobile Reviews, I hope I'm getting that right, covered it the best with a lot more examples of different types of drops that most users would experience on a daily basis. And if you watch this entire video, in this video, you will see the iPhone 15 Pro glass does actually shatter on the bottom first after about 10 drops. But if you look at the repeated drops also on the 14 Pro, it starts to look worse for wear. Basically, as you go through the video, you'll find advantages and disadvantages to the iPhone 15 Pro structural integrity, as well as with the iPhone 14 Pro, going over how stainless steel and titanium suffer damage. But this video kind of illustrates another point that I think rarely gets taken into account with any glass device, and that is really it all depends on how you drop your phone and how often you drop your phone. You could drop a phone from really high up and literally suffer no damage sometimes, but other times you can drop it from your pocket, hit a corner, or hit a rock the wrong way, and all of a sudden your phone glass is just shattered. Also, repeated drops of the phone does weaken the structural integrity over time. So you could drop your phone a few times and it could be perfectly fine, look like you never dropped it, but you could drop it from a similar height onto a similar surface, and it could end up breaking even if it fell the exact same way. Just because you've dropped your phone so many times, you compromise the structural integrity of the device. Now, is the iPhone 15 Pro less durable than the iPhone 14 Pro or the Pro Max? I think the evidence does say yes, particularly for the rear glass. Don't forget, most of these tests had the front glass still intact, so I don't think this is an issue solely from just the titanium frame, because then both parts of the glass should be compromised in the same way. So you might be wondering, okay, why is the rear glass breaking and the front glass seems to be just as okay as it was on the old iPhone 14 Pro? And that's the question I ask myself, and I really think this has to do with the change that Apple made this year to repairability. In short, the iPhone 15 Pro is easier to repair this year because the backs are easier to detach. They're kind of like not one cohesive unit like they were on the iPhone 14 Pro. This extra repairability has led to benefits though. Number one, it's now easier to get to the back of the iPhone 15 Pro. Furthermore, it's actually decreased what used to be a very expensive repair cost. The iPhone 15 Pro now costs $169 to repair without Apple Care, and the back glass for the Pro Max costs $200. Compare that to the iPhone 14 Pro, which costs, get this, $500 to repair the back glass, and the iPhone 14 Pro Max costs $549 to repair that same back glass. Now, was this more repairable design worth it for the decreased protection it seems that the back glass has? I guess that's on who you ask. Everyone has different priorities, but so many people, including a lot of the people doing these torture tests, have advocated for more repairable iPhone designs, and now that they get one, they're complaining. So it's kind of like you reap what you sow. You ask for this stuff. It's kind of like the cases. Like people are like, don't use leather, Apple. Then they come out with these new fine woven cases, and now everyone's complaining that they're not as good as leather. Duh. So you could go either way on if this back glass being more fragile is an issue to you. But let's talk about the overheating scandal, because I think this one might turn out to be a non-issue. So basically, we had a lot of people talking about their iPhones overheating after they unboxed it. Don't forget, as I'm making this video, this iPhone isn't even a week old yet. This is the 6th day that I am using it. And most of these complaints stems from the first few days of iPhone unboxing during the initial setup. This led some people to conclude that the A17 Pro chip ran hot, which actually it does. It does seem to be true that at peak performance, it consumes more power than the A16 Pro, but most people are not using the peak performance of the A17 Pro chip when they're using their phone for normal tasks like taking video or going through Twitter, right? And these heat problems really seem to stem from artificial benchmarks. Another conclusion was that titanium dissipates heat less efficiently than stainless steel, which is true, and that is what is leading to the compromised thermal design. But again, I have to question how big of a deal this design decision is, considering Apple isn't even using a full titanium frame here. It's actually a mix of aluminum and titanium, with the titanium just being on the outer side of the device, away from the internals where the phone gets hot. So realistically, I have to ask, how much is that thin layer of titanium really holding in all this extra heat? I really don't know, and I do want to preface this saying I think we need some more time testing these devices to determine if there is an overheating problem, but what I will say is that conducting these tests during the first few days of an iPhone purchase is disingenuous. And that's because if you don't know, when you first set up an iPhone, it is running through a lot of background tasks like syncing your entire iCloud photo library, running on-device machine learning algorithms to find faces in photos, or detecting depth data for editing portrait mode photos, or indexing the search data on your phone so you can do spotlight searches. And you're probably also downloading a ton of apps, right? You just set up a new phone, you're downloading all the old apps you had on your old phone, and there's just other things that make your phone run hotter than it usually would on a normal day. And it also drains your battery significantly during the setup. That's why if you ever see someone review battery life on a new device without owning it for a full week, you should never fully trust those results, especially on day one. People are reviewing the battery on day one. Nonsense. Not to mention, most people mentioned they noticed the heat on the first day while also charging their phone while using it. All situations I faced in the past that would heat up any iPhone during setup. Any iPhone would heat up during those conditions. In fact, this iPhone 15 Pro was hot during setup day, but I didn't tweet or complain about it because this isn't my first rodeo. I know iPhones heat up during the first few days and they drain battery faster during the first few days because of all that setup. But now, after 6 days of using this phone, it doesn't overheat. I've used it in my car for map directions while playing music. I've used it to shoot photos and videos. I even did a test recording of 4K ProRes file for 20 minutes. I was like, okay, let me see. Can I overheat this thing? And it didn't. And others are basically seeing the same thing and reporting no thermal issue after a few days of use. Could there be a thermal issue that I and others are not seeing? Yes, it's totally possible. Like I said at the start, I don't pretend to know everything. I can only give you my own results from using these devices, how I use them. And as a blanket statement, new designs usually aren't a complete net good or net bad. There's pros and cons to the way that things are designed, and there's benefits like lower repair costs, and there's disadvantages like the back of the glass maybe being easier to break than previous years. Ultimately, as the customer, you have the power to determine if those issues are real issues for you, and if they are, don't buy the product. If they aren't, and if your real-world experience, you aren't facing these issues, then don't be scared of the product either. And again, if you are facing any of these problems and you're like, my iPhone's overheating, I don't know what Greg's talking about, it's awful, the camera's awful, the titanium's scratched, I hate this phone, then don't listen to me either. Go return the device right now when you still can. Don't hold on to the thing if you don't like it. Now, to me, this iPhone, after using it for about a week, it has a lot of benefits to the new design that I like, even if I'm willing to make some of those trade-offs. It's lighter, it's more comfortable to hold, the titanium looks great, it feels great in the hands, and this phone is snappy and responsive with that A17 Pro chip, and I really like the camera. Things I don't like about it are battery life, which I am hesitant to even really give a full opinion on right now because, again, I haven't used this for a full week, just like I told you to be wary of. But if you want to know, my own personal experience with this iPhone 15 Pro Max battery is basically, it's about the same as my 14 Pro Max, which did get me through a full day of usage, but it didn't leave much room to spare. And as the battery started to age on the 14 Pro Max, and it got less and less at the end of the day, to the point where when you get to like 90% battery capacity, maybe you have to charge it halfway through the day. So for the 15 Pro Max, I was hoping for better battery life, so that wouldn't happen as the battery aged. I'm not really seeing that so far in the 15 Pro Max. Seems to be about the same battery life as I was getting last year. Alright, but what is the main point of this video? Listen, I consider myself to be an Apple enthusiast. I like Apple products. I like a lot of other products too. A good product is a good product. And I judge them as I would any product because ultimately, my allegiance is to you, the viewer, and also to my own personal integrity, myself. If I recommend a product like this iPhone and it sucks and you have a terrible time with it and it snaps in half when you touch it wrong or it overheats and burns your hand like a McDonald's coffee, why would you ever watch any of my videos ever again if I ever recommended a defective product like that? I have no reason to lie to you about my own personal experience with this device. And if I did lie to you, it would only be to my own detriment. I don't even have a personal connection with Apple as a company. They don't send me devices. They don't pay me. I pay them. I buy all of these products every year and I don't return most of them. It's an expense for this channel. But what I do care about is accurate information and not jumping to conclusions. For some reason, I still care about integrity in a world that seems to care less and less about it. It would probably be more beneficial for me if I jumped to conclusions like everyone else out there to get more attention, to get more views, to hype up these controversies to the point where you have reaction streamers reacting to them, because we live in a fast-paced society and we move from controversy to controversy in days. And because of that, people forget. People forget what you said, and there's less and less accountability every day. People want what happened to Lou. They want 78 million views generated on an iPhone video that talks about how bad it is. And people fall into that trap easily. They make one video about the iPhone having an issue, and suddenly they start getting views. And then they make another video, and it doesn't get views. And then suddenly they go, oh, wait, when I talked about the iPhone stinking, it got views. So maybe I should do that again. It happens. I've seen it happen to multiple channels. Because iPhones, like it or not, they're a big topic for people who like Apple products and for people who don't like Apple products. Now, to be fair, that's not everyone. There's a lot of credible and trusted channels out there. But it is a big enough issue that I do see it. And it warrants at least warning my viewers to get a second opinion. And I say this even for my channel. Don't watch a Greg's Gadgets video on an iPhone review and think, that is it, that is the definitive opinion, that is the definitive review. It is the best review ever, it got nothing wrong. No, listen, I am human. I may have missed something. I may have got something wrong. I make mistakes all the time. To get a really good idea of how a device works, or if there's issues with it, you should watch a few reviews from different channels and then make up your own mind. Because ultimately, you, the viewer, are what matters. It is your opinion, it is your experience with these devices that matters. If you have a bad experience with it or a good experience with it, trust your gut. Okay, let me have it in the comments. I know, I'm gonna get the usual, right? Apple fanboy, Apple pays you, Apple defender, all the usual suspects because it's another year, it's another iPhone release, and if you have even a slightly different opinion, even though I think this video is pretty fair, people get upset. They're like, why? Well, you don't completely agree with me, Greg? I'm upset at you. You stink. Greg, cut your hair. Greg, style your hair differently. Greg, do this. Greg, do that. Greg. I get it. I'm human. Why you gotta criticize me all the time? Why you gotta make fun of the way I say button? You don't think I see those comments? I see all the comments criticizing me all the time. You think it doesn't affect me? It doesn't. I don't care. Keep criticizing me. I like it. I don't care. It's YouTube. You gotta have a thick skin to be in this game. I got the thickest skin. It's a little too thick. I could afford to lose a little bit of weight. That's a criticism. I criticize myself. All right, have a good day. I'll see you in the next one, guys. I love you.